This series begins by showing a Christmas Eve scene in the bustling city of Seoul, where a beautiful woman in her 30s does the unthinkable by jumping from the building where she works. It is not yet known what motivated her to take such a drastic step, but what is clear is that the woman died after her body was thrown onto a parked car. 3 years later, a charismatic, handsome young man named Eun Hwan-ki appears. He is the CEO of a public relations company, but suffers from extreme introversion, which makes him unwilling to socialize with anyone, including his own employees. Because of this, rumors spread that anyone who dares to look Hwan-ki in the eye will feel as though their heart is freezing due to his sharp and mysterious gaze. In fact, due to his withdrawn and quiet nature, even his secretary, Kim, is very scared and struggles when she has to relay information about the company. Moreover, Kim often tiptoes and removes her shoes so as not to create any noise that might disturb Hwan-ki. At the time, the company is busy with a presentation for an opera marketing project, and Hwan-ki is required to attend a rehearsal event. However, Hwan-ki gives his task to one of his subordinates, his friend and the vice CEO of the company, Kang Woo-il, who has been working hard and serves as his right-hand man. Because of this task, Woo-il's reputation has risen significantly compared to that of the CEO himself. Confidently, Woo-il conducts the presentation rehearsal, impressing the other employees, making them believe that this time the project will successfully outshine their competitors. Unexpectedly, their rival company delivers an identical presentation to the one Woo-il was about to give, causing the employees to panic as they could not prepare new material in such a short time. Nevertheless, when it's Woo-il's turn to present in front of the clients, he unexpectedly tears up the material he had prepared and delivers a spontaneous presentation, which is met with overwhelming praise. It turns out that this brilliant idea came from Hwan-ki, who was hiding in a room wearing a black hoodie. Hwan-ki had realized earlier that Woo-il's presentation had been copied by the rival company. As a result, Woo-il was amazed to discover that Hwan-ki had a well-thought-out strategy that Woo-il had never noticed before. On the other hand, a rising opera star named Chai Ro-woon, who is not only beautiful and talented, but also always energetic and enthusiastic, comes into focus. For years, Hwan-ki has been a huge fan of Ro-woon, never missing her performances. Hwan-ki also gives her flowers, though he has never yet been willing to meet her face-to-face. Each time Hwan-ki gathers the courage to meet her, he always backs out, feeling too insecure, and continues to hide his face. At the same time, Ro-woon hopes that her secret admirer, whom she calls Mr. Smith, will finally meet her. Ro-woon is incredibly curious about the person who has supported her all this time. However, it turns out that this day will be her last as an opera performer. Realizing that his introversion was worsening, Hwan-ki often consulted with a psychiatrist. However, due to his highly antisocial nature, these consultations often took place in random locations, separated by a wall. At that moment, the psychiatrist advised Hwan-ki to try, just once, to express his feelings to the girl he admired because she believed that otherwise, it would become increasingly difficult for Hwan-ki as he grew more accustomed to his behavior. The psychiatrist even compared it to someone learning how to ride a bicycle, emphasizing that Hwan-ki needed to practice frequently. In short, while exercising, Hwan-ki constantly repeated the phrases that the psychiatrist had taught him, which led to some misunderstandings among the women present. This only frustrated Hwan-ki even more. In the office elevator, Hwan-ki met Woo-il, who expressed disappointment in him for not attending the office party, celebrating their successful presentation. Although Hwan-ki had actually arrived, the moment he heard that the employees were gossiping about him, he immediately changed his mind and left. To make matters worse, the employees were also praising Woo-il for playing such a major role in the company's success. Afterward, Hwan-ki was shocked to learn that Secretary Kim had decided to resign because she felt uncomfortable working for a boss who was known to be strange, cold, and constantly made her feel stressed. Fortunately, Woo-il managed to convince Secretary Kim to be patient for a little while longer. Several days later, Hwan-ki decided to confess to Ro-woon that he was her biggest fan, so he changed his appearance by going to an expensive salon. However, after over-preparing and imagining the moment he would meet Ro-woon, Hwan-ki lost control, causing his car to crash into the car in front of him. To his shock, The woman who stepped out of the car he hit was Ro Woon. As a result, his mind went blank, and Hwan Ki immediately thought that he wasn't ready to meet Ro Woon, even though she was standing right in front of him. At that moment, Hwan Ki's introverted nature resurfaced, and he didn't want to roll down the car window, instead only offering compensation money. Ro Woon, offended by this, chased after Hwan Ki, eventually ending up at a company, the same one where she was about to start working. From a security guard, Ro Woon learned that the car that hit hers belonged to the CEO. Therefore, she was determined to confront him, believing that money was not a fair resolution. Ro Woon then went to the top floor and walked straight into Hwan Ki's office, as there was no secretary present. Hwan Ki, who had just finished showering, was startled to find a stranger in his office. At that moment, Ro Woon introduced herself before brought up the recent car accident, but Hwan Ki kept avoiding her and desperately tried to cover his face, leading to a commotion that was eventually interrupted by Secretary Kim. When Ro Woon tried to remove the cover from Hwan Ki's face, Secretary Kim asked her to leave immediately for barging in without permission and advised her to settle the accident compensation issue through the insurance department. Additionally, Secretary Kim added that their boss was a very mysterious person. Afterward, Ro Woon met with her senior, as it was her first day at work, so they held a new employee celebration, singing and drinking at a club. At that moment, Ro Woon's cheerful personality and ability to lighten the mood impressed Woo Il, although at first one of the employees had underestimated her due to her educational background. When the opportunity arose, Ro Woon spoke with Woo Il about their CEO's strange personality. The next day at work, Ro Woon gathered information about Hwan Ki from a security guard, who told her that the CEO was known for having some strange habits, like ordering knives in the middle of the night for unknown reasons. Ro Woon also began to form a closer bond with Secretary Kim by inviting her for herbal tea. During their conversation, Secretary Kim admitted that she could no longer stand working for a boss like Hwan Ki. She then recalled a moment when she saw Hwan Ki dragging a sack, which made her even more curious about its contents. As a result, Ro Woon's suspicion deepened, and she started to believe that Hwan Ki might be a psychopath. Unexpectedly, the reason Hwan Ki collected knives was because he enjoyed cooking and needed different knives for various purposes. The sack he had been carrying actually contained radishes that he intended to cook, and he had planned to invite his secretary to join him for a meal. However, since Secretary Kim already saw him as a frightening figure, she declined the lunch invitation, even though she was extremely hungry, to the point where her stomach condition flared up. Inside his office, Hwan Ki had prepared a special meal for her, but in the end, he ate it alone. Not long after, Secretary Kim could no longer endure the stomach pain caused by skipping meals. But she didn't dare ask Hwan Ki for permission to take a break, because she mistakenly thought he had ordered her to stay on standby and forbidden her from resting. Fortunately, Ro Woon noticed that Secretary Kim was about to faint, so she quickly took her to the hospital. At the same time, Hwan Ki was visiting his parents. They were very happy to see him, as was his younger sister, Isu, since it had been a long time since Hwan Ki visited his family. Isu was very close to her brother, even helping him tidy up, including trimming his hair. She was also curious if Hwan Ki had a girlfriend at that point. Shortly after, Hwan Ki received news from Woo Il that Secretary Kim had been hospitalized due to stomach ulcers and exhaustion from work. Ro Woon, seeing Secretary Kim being treated, was suddenly reminded of her late older sister, Ji-hae, who had done the unthinkable at the office building. This was the reason Ro Woon had joined Hwan Ki's company, as she wanted to uncover the truth about what had happened to her sister. Based on her observations, Ro Woon believed that Hwan Ki was a cruel person, fueling her determination to prove that her sister's death was related to him. However, in reality, Hwan Ki was a kind man who had always been the one giving Ro Woon flowers. After one of her opera performances, the flowers from Hwan Ki meant a great deal to her. When she was feeling down, it was those flowers that gave her the strength and motivation to get back on her feet, even though she still didn't know that it was Hwan Ki who had sent them, as he used the pseudonym Mr. Smith. That very night, Hwan Ki had even managed to come and watch Ro Woon's opera. Unfortunately, Ro Woon had already resigned. The next day, Hwan Ki gathered the courage to visit Secretary Kim in the hospital, where he immediately apologized and admitted that he had been suffering from an antisocial disorder, which made it difficult for him to interact with others. Huan Qi also felt guilty for making his secretary work to the point of forgetting to eat. Therefore, he promised to cover her hospital expenses and find a psychiatrist for her if she felt traumatized by having a boss like him. Hearing this, Secretary Kim felt sad because she had misjudged Huan Qi all this time. However, the news about Huan Qi mistreating Secretary Kim had already spread online. Eventually, the news even reached Huan Qi's father, who was playing golf at the time. The situation at the office became increasingly chaotic as all the employees were busy answering calls from the media trying to confirm the story. Huan Qi, who had no idea about the news, became visibly anxious when reporters suddenly arrived. Fortunately, the reporters didn't recognize him, and the situation was quickly handled by Wu Il. Ro Woon, who happened to be at the company, immediately chased after Huan Qi as he tried to escape into the elevator. However, just as she was about to ask if he was truly Huan Qi, Wu Il intervened and asked Ro Woon to take another elevator. At that moment, Huan Qi found it strange that Ro Woon was always around his company, so he asked Wu Il about it, where he explained that Ro Woon was a new employee. This left Huan Qi puzzled, wondering why Ro Woon, a talented opera performer, would choose to work at his company. However, before Huan Qi could investigate her motives for being there, he had to resolve his own problems first. Shortly after, Huan Qi met with Secretary Kim and advised her not to admit the rumors, as doing so could protect her from being fired. Afterward, Huan Qi went to the rooftop and recalled that what happened to Secretary Kim was eerily similar to what had occurred to Ji-hye 3 years ago, just before she'd do the unthinkable. Unexpectedly, Huan Qi realized that he had distanced himself and changed his behavior after Ji-hye had a misunderstanding with him. To this day, Huan Qi still feels guilty and can only apologize. In short, Ro Woon arrived on the rooftop, startling Huan Qi and causing him to nearly fall. Luckily, Ro Woon quickly grabbed hold of him, making Huan Qi extremely nervous due to her aggressive behavior toward him. Huan Qi couldn't even bring himself to look Ro Woon in the eye as she pinned him down. Instead, he fled back to his office. Huan Qi, feeling that all the problems were his fault, planned to take responsibility and apologize publicly in front of the reporters. He also intended to reveal his identity for the first time in front of everyone. However, just as he was about to make his confession, Wu Il stopped him, not wanting the events of 3 years ago to be brought up again. Wu Il had already devised his own plan to address the situation, telling the media that, as a form of accountability, Huan Qi would step down from his position as CEO. Initially, Huan Qi rejected the idea, as he wanted to take responsibility for the problems he had caused himself. But then Wu Il became enraged and questioned whether Huan Qi could even handle it in front of the media, given how he always becomes fearful and anxious when meeting someone. In the end, Huan Qi decided not to admit his mistakes and asked Wu Il to handle the issue. Shortly after, Wu Il brought Secretary Kim to confess in front of the reporters that the rumors about Huan Qi mistreating her were not true. It turned out that Huan Qi had visited her in the hospital to check on her and showed concern as a boss, although she had been paid to say so. On the other hand, Ro Woon felt that Secretary Kim's confession was false and suspected that she had been intimidated by Huan Qi. Upset, as she believed Huan Qi was trying to shirk responsibility for the problem, Ro Woon confronted Secretary Kim about the matter. However, Secretary Kim insisted that she wasn't lying about Huan Qi visiting her in the hospital. She also admitted that she had accepted the bribe because she needed money to pay off her family's debts. Secretary Kim's words reminded Ro Woon of her late sister, who might have done the same thing if she had been in Secretary Kim's position. After the incident, Secretary Kim resigned. Meanwhile, Huan Qi was being punished by his father, who believed that Huan Qi was not competent enough to continue running the company. As part of his punishment, his father took Huan Qi to play tennis on the rooftop and deliberately hit the ball toward him, leaving Huan Qi with a bruised shoulder. After that, his father also took him to the sauna and trained his son to socialize with others. Since Huan Qi's secretary position was now vacant, the employees gossiped that no one in the world would be willing to become his secretary, given his strange and arrogant personality. Unbeknownst to them, Huan Qi overheard this from behind the office door. To everyone's surprise, Ro Woon volunteered to become his secretary, leaving the senior employees baffled since she was still new to the company. One day, Ro-woon was tasked with delivering items to be used as props for a photo shoot. By chance, Ro-woon encountered Hwan-ki, whom she mistook for a new courier at the company. Without realizing that Hwan-ki was the CEO, Ro-woon innocently handed him the items. Hwan-ki, not wanting to reveal his position in the company, couldn't refuse her request. However, due to traffic, he arrived late at the photo shoot, causing Ro-woon to be scolded by the senior staff. The items Ro-woon was supposed to bring were expensive, and to make matters worse, she had given them to a courier whose name she didn't even know. As a result, the senior employees ordered Ro-woon to find the courier immediately, as she was at risk of being reported to the police for conspiring with an imposter courier. Upon hearing this, Ro-woon rushed to find Hwan-ki so the props could be retrieved quickly. As it turned out, Hwan-ki was also running to the location because he couldn't get through the traffic by car. When Hwan-ki saw Ro-woon running toward him, he noticed a food delivery driver nearly hitting her. Swiftly, Hwan-ki sped up to save her, but in doing so, Ro-woon fell after Hwan-ki pushed her to avoid the motorbike. In reality, the food delivery driver posed no danger to Ro-woon, as he was headed toward 3 women waiting for their meal delivery. Embarrassed, Hwan-ki quickly fled when all the employees, including Woo-il, saw the commotion. A few days later, after being removed from his position and with his father wanting him to change, his father implemented a policy to renovate Hwan-ki's office and appointed him as the head of the Silent Monster Division. When Hwan-ki discovered that his office had been changed, he tried to protest to Woo-il, as he wasn't ready to face the employees selected to assist him. However, since it was his father's order, Hwan-ki had no choice but to comply. Moreover, the employees Hwan-ki had chosen puzzled Woo-il, as the names on the list were those of underperforming employees or those who frequently caused problems. What Woo-il didn't realize was that Hwan-ki had gathered information about all the employees and believed that the ones he had selected were actually highly capable, including a former secretary who had previously resigned from the position. The employees appointed by Hwan-ki were Yoo-hee, who often arrived late to work but was very caring toward her colleagues. Sun Bong, who was known for his frequent criticism but was actually highly skilled in his field, and another man with blonde hair. Unexpectedly, Woo-il also added Ro-woon to the list, which of course made Hwan-ki immediately cover his face with a hoodie when they met. Seeing this, Woo-il deliberately pulled up the hoodie, allowing the 5 employees to finally see the real face of their company's CEO. At that moment, Ro-woon was shocked, never expecting that the man she thought was a new courier was actually the CEO of the company. Not long after, Hwan-ki, who wasn't used to having so many people in his office, remained silent and didn't do anything. This made his employees feel awkward, as there was no meaningful conversation. In the midst of the silence, Hwan-ki suddenly told his employees to work more casually without worrying about his presence. However, Yoo-hee misinterpreted this, thinking that Hwan-ki was asking them to move their desks closer to him. Ro-woon, feeling uncomfortable with the stiff atmosphere, then took the initiative to suggest that the other employees have a small celebration to mark the formation of the new division. Ro-woon then bought coffee and some cakes, but when Hwan-ki drank the coffee, he couldn't handle it because it was too bitter. When he tried to add sugar, Hwan-ki hurriedly went to the kitchen, not wanting his employees to misunderstand as he spat out the coffee. However, his actions were misinterpreted by all the employees, including Ro-woon. To make matters worse, Ro-woon saw Hwan-ki throwing away the coffee, leading her to comment that her boss had no empathy for discarding the coffee she had bought. Not wanting Hwan-ki to feel guilty, Woo-il attempted to grab a knife to cut the cake. However, this startled Ro-woon, as the kitchen cupboard was filled with knives that Hwan-ki had collected due to his love for cooking. Ro-woon, who believed in the rumors that Hwan-ki was a psychopath responsible for her late sister's death, became even more suspicious. Eventually, Hwan-ki left the room, feeling suffocated by the number of people present. He went to the parking lot, venting his frustration, and happened to see Woo-il inviting Ro-woon to get into his car. The closeness between Woo-il and Ro-woon reminded Hwan-ki of an incident 3 years ago when Ji-hae and Woo-il were in a car together, showing affection. Fearing for Ro-woon's safety, Hwan-ki called Woo-il, but he immediately hung up, saying he was driving. Watching Ro-woon leave with Woo-il threw Hwan-ki into a mental spiral. Although her real purpose for getting close to Woo-il was to learn more about Hwan-ki, while Woo-il had his own motive for taking Ro-woon along as he wanted to introduce her to a senior artist who, despite being involved in a scandal, seemed like the perfect first client for Silent Monster. As a result, Hwan-ki, unaware of Woo-il's true intention, appeared upset in his office, leading all the employees to urge Ro-woon to return immediately, as Hwan-ki seemed angry that she had left without informing him. Because of this, Ro-woon immediately returned to the office. However, upon arriving, she was ignored by Hwan-ki, who only told her to clean up the cake they had just eaten. This made Ro-woon upset, feeling that Hwan-ki was simply messing with her. When she got home, which also doubled as her father's barbershop, Ro-woon was still irritated. Moreover, her relationship with her father now felt distant, with their conversations limited to asking whether she had eaten or not. Fortunately, Ro-woon managed to smile again when she saw a bouquet of flowers from Mr. Smith. A little later, Ro-woon was called back to the office. As usual, she was startled by the sudden appearance of Hwan-ki holding a knife, though he only intended to use it to cut fermented fish. Not long after, Woo-il arrived with the senior artist who was to become their client. This made all the employees excited, as they now had a client who was even an idol. At the same time, Hwan-ki could only hold back his frustration as he saw the mess in his office. After listening to the artist explain the scandal accusations, Hwan-ki, with his calm approach, easily resolved the entire case. Ro-woon witnessed this and realized that her previous judgment of Hwan-ki had been very wrong, as he turned out to be a genuinely kind person. However, Hwan-ki struggled to express his kindness due to his extremely introverted nature. One day, Ro-woon asked why Hwan-ki always seemed to carry the weight of guilt, as if he had committed a terrible mistake. This caused Hwan-ki to be reminded of his past when Ji-hae passed away. Additionally, after her sister's death, Ro-woon's once happy family suddenly fell into a life of misery. Ro-woon was deeply devastated by the loss of her beloved older sister, feeling as though her world had collapsed and she had lost the will to live. This is why Hwan-ki always feels guilty, even believing that he was responsible for Ji-hae taking such drastic actions. The next day, Ro-woon, now curious about Hwan-ki, tried to find out what he did when he was alone. To do so, Ro-woon deliberately arrived at the office earlier to secretly observe what Hwan-ki was doing. At that moment, Ro-woon was shocked to see the normally cold Hwan-ki energetically dancing, making her unable to believe what she was seeing. However, when she looked again, Hwan-ki was already back in his usual place, behaving as he normally would. Still uncertain about his personality, Ro-woon became eager to learn everything about him, including his hobbies. In the evening, Ro-woon deliberately stayed in the basement to follow Hwan-ki, noticing that he didn't always stay in his office. Unbeknownst to his employees, Hwan-ki secretly went to a sports center to play tennis alone, which made Ro-woon astonished to see with her own eyes that Hwan-ki was actually skilled in sports. However, when Ro-woon greeted him, Hwan-ki immediately returned to his indifferent demeanor and became suddenly anxious. Uncomfortable with someone else's presence, Hwan-ki quickly left, leaving Ro-woon puzzled as to why he always behaved that way. Back at the office, Hwan-ki felt uneasy about Ro-woon's actions, especially because she always seemed interested in his private matters. Hwan-ki then confided in Woo-il, where he promised to help if Hwan-ki was bothered by Ro-woon's presence, as Woo-il intended to make her as his staff member. The next day, Hwan-ki saw Ro-woon leave with Woo-il again. This only deepened his problem, although the real reason Ro-woon kept meeting Woo-il was to learn more about Hwan-ki. Ro-woon also felt that Hwan-ki, as the division leader, wasn't doing anything to ensure the success of the division. Meanwhile, Woo-il seemed to be developing an interest in Ro-woon, who was attractive and naive. He appeared to take advantage of Ro-woon's curiosity about Hwan-ki as a way to spend time alone with her. Woo-il even went as far as to show off his influence within the company by introducing Ro-woon to some important clients. When Ro-woon returned home, she was reminded of her original purpose for working at Hwan-ki's company, which was to find out why Ji-hae did the unthinkable. Ro-woon believed that her sister wouldn't have taken such drastic action unless something had pushed her to do it. After all, Jihei was known within the family for having a good personality and had never had any problems or enemies. The next day at the office, during a typically cold atmosphere, Ro Woon and her colleagues were surprised when, for the first time, Huan Qi gave them an order. At that moment, Huan Qi instructed them not to meet with anyone, an unreasonable request that Ro Woon ignored by answering a phone call. This infuriated Huan Qi even more, especially since the order was meant specifically for her, who frequently talked to Wu Il. Unexpectedly, the call Ro Woon received was from the CEO of a ramen company that Wu Il had introduced her to the night before. The client wanted to use the services of Silent Monster. Huan Qi, who happened to be nearby, was immediately persuaded by Ro Woon to take on the project. Ro Woon even asked for permission to accompany the CEO to play wall tennis, as Huan Qi often did. Of course, Huan Qi rejected this idea, although he eventually showed up at the sports center. At that moment, Huan Qi's introverted nature resurfaced as he refused to return the ball to the CEO, causing the man to become frustrated, feeling as though he was being toyed with. Things escalated when the CEO started flirting with Ro Woon, prompting Huan Qi to act decisively. With one powerful shot, he hit the CEO in the face with the ball, injuring him. As a result, the CEO had to be taken to the hospital, and the deal with Silent Monster was canceled. Wu Il even had to step in to clean up the mess caused by Huan Qi. Huan Qi, feeling that Wu Il always takes advantage of his problems to boost his own reputation, told him not to be too greedy and to stop meddling in his affairs. As if confirming his words, Wu Il justified his actions by claiming that everything he does is for the sake of protecting the employees. All this time, Huan Qi hasn't been able to do that because he's always wasted time and opportunities. Although angered by these words, Huan Qi couldn't respond, as there was some truth to what Wu Il said. Moreover, the Silent Monster division, which he leads, still hadn't shown any progress, and his 5 employees were now at risk of being fired. After this confrontation, Huan Qi began working hard alone, conducting research on ramen. When his 5 employees entered the office, they usually sat idle all day due to a lack of work. But this time they were shocked as Huan Qi suddenly assigned he to do a presentation. However, since it had been so long since he had done a presentation, she looked confused by the abrupt request. On the day of the presentation, another problem arose when he was late and might not arrive on time. Feeling he had no other option, Huan Qi quickly got ready to leave, but Ro Woon and the others stopped him and urged their boss to do the presentation in Yuhi's place. When Huan Qi began the presentation, he immediately felt overwhelmed, panicked, and nervous in front of everyone. Seeing this, Ro Woon became anxious, not expecting that Huan Qi would be unable to say anything. Eventually, Huan Qi left abruptly and locked himself in his office. This incident made all the employees feel guilty for recklessly pushing their boss to do the presentation. To make matters worse, Huan Qi locked the office, and even Wu Il, who usually could persuade him, failed to do so. Feeling regretful, the employees gathered at a cafe to discuss the situation while drinking. As they got caught up in their conversation, they all became heavily intoxicated, and Ro Woon, without realizing it, called Huan Qi. Knowing his employees were drunk, Huan Qi rushed to meet them. However, it turned into a hassle for him, as he had to take each employee home, one by one. Lastly, Huan Qi had to deal with Ro Woon, who became very aggressive under the influence of alcohol. At that moment, Ro Woon expressed that she felt Huan Qi always looked down on the employees as if they were useless. However, on the other hand, Huan Qi constantly tried to protect the employees in secret. Ro Woon added that if Huan Qi continued doing that, in the end, there would be no employees left for him to protect. Hearing Ro Woon's words, Huan Qi was reminded of the past when Jihei was still his secretary. Due to her kind nature, Jihei had the ability to help Huan Qi come out of his introverted personality. Huan Qi even didn't hesitate to ask Jihei for advice on how to approach women despite her own insecurities. Day by day, the relationship between Huan Qi and Jihei became more than just that of a boss and subordinate. They had become close friends. With Jihei's guidance, Huan Qi succeeded in getting closer to a woman named Yun Jung, who was a friend from his college days. At that time, Huan Qi was very happy because, despite his introverted nature, he was able to maintain a relationship with Yun Jung. As a token of gratitude, Huan Qi once gave Ji Hei a pair of shoes. Unexpectedly, Wu Il was also in a relationship with Yi Su. One day, Wu Il asked Huan Qi for permission to get close to Ji Hei because he wanted to seek her advice to improve his relationship with Yi Su. Initially, Huan Qi refused the request because he feared Wu Il might take advantage of Ji Hei. Despite this, Huan Qi eventually allowed him to befriend her. As time goes by, Wu Il developed feelings for Ji Hei, who did not actually like Yi Su. However, at that time, Huan Qi's mother instructed Wu Il to get engaged to her daughter. Wu Il, who always obeyed his family's wishes, resigned himself to the engagement decision, feeling indebted to Huan Qi's family for taking him out of the orphanage. Despite this, Wu Il secretly continued to be close to Ji Hei, who preferred Huan Qi. This was evident when Ji Hei was about to give Huan Qi a self-made sketch as a gift. Ji Hei also gathered the courage to invite Huan Qi to an opera performance where Rowoon was performing. However, Huan Qi had already planned a first date with Yun Jung at that time. When Ji Hei was about to give the sketch to Huan Qi, Wu Il saw the situation and requested the sketch for himself. Eventually, she gave the sketch to Wu Il to keep. One day, Wu Il met Huan Qi's father coming out of his office. Curiosity led him to investigate what Huan Qi's father had been doing, and he discovered a surveillance device that had been used to monitor his activities. This revelation shattered Wu Il, as he realized that he was still considered an outsider by Huan Qi's family. Despite always obeying their wishes, including the engagement with Yi Su. Feeling disappointed, Wu Il invited Ji Hei to accompany him to a nightclub. Under the influence of alcohol, Wu Il lost control and hugged Ji Hei. Eventually, they ended up in a car, and at the same time, Huan Qi saw them being affectionate. Normally open with Ji Hei, Huan Qi began to show a cold attitude because he was deeply disappointed. The incident even caused Huan Qi to cancel a blind date he had planned for Christmas Eve. The next day, Ji Hei contacted Wu Il to meet at the office to discuss what had happened between them that night. Unexpectedly, Huan Qi overheard this and immediately intercepted Wu Il to ask what had really happened. However, Wu Il twisted the facts, claiming that he was drunk and that Ji Hei had provoked him, leading to the incident in the car. Unbeknownst to him, Ji Hei had overheard his statement, which shocked her to hear the lies. Additionally, Ji Hei also learned for the first time that Wu Il was engaged to Yi Su. Feeling deceived by him, Ji Hei ultimately decided to do the unthinkable, which led to Rowoon's devastation and her family's ruin. Rowoon's grief was further added when her mother, unable to cope with the loss of Ji Hei, died of a heart attack. Wu Il, who should have been responsible for all the mistakes, instead begged Huan Qi to help him and keep everything a secret. Huan Qi eventually decided to take responsibility and announced that Ji Hei's death as being caused by work-related stress. Since then, Huan Qi's introverted behavior worsened. However, to alleviate his guilt a little, Huan Qi continuously sent flowers to Rowoon just as Ji Hei had done before. Huan Qi even disguised himself using the initials Mr. Smith. Thanks to these flowers, Rowoon, who had been devastated and lost her spirit, slowly began to recover. Moving to the present, Rowoon, who was unconscious in Huan Qi's arms, continued to speak, even mentioning that she would seek revenge on Huan Qi for causing Ji Hei's death. Upon hearing this, Huan Qi could only remain silent and continued to carry Rowoon until they reached her home. The next day, back at the office, the employees completely forgot that the person who had helped them when they were unconscious due to alcohol the night before was Huan Qi. Rowoon even only remembered that the person who helped them had a very distinct perfume. When they saw Huan Qi arrived, they were slightly puzzled by his appearance with sunglasses. Unexpectedly, he wore them to cover his bruised eyes, which he got when Rowoon accidentally hit him the night before. Soon after, a video was uploaded showing Huan Qi standing silent during a presentation. This led everyone, including his company's employees, to ridicule Huan Qi. Even worse, the media immediately reported this, calling Huan Qi an arrogant CEO and blaming his father for having such a son. Huan Qi's father, upon hearing the news, rushed to the office, furious with his son. Therefore, He immediately reminded Huan Qi to be more dependable like Wu Il, who was always reliable in everything. Because of this, Huan Qi could only remain silent before leaving the place. Ro Wun, seeing Huan Qi in trouble, tried to follow him, but he had locked himself in his car. Eventually, Huan Qi was softened by Ro Wun's persuasion, who said that she and the other colleagues had acknowledged that all of Wu Il's ideas and concepts were actually the brilliant ideas of him. Not long after, Huan Qi's Silent Monster Division faced the threat of being disbanded due to his father's previous anger. Moreover, since the division was formed, they had yet to contribute anything to the company. However, Wu Il said that Huan Qi's father was still giving them a chance on the condition that the employees must be able to transform Huan Qi's closed-off personality into that of a true leader. Upon hearing this condition, all the employees were pessimistic, believing that it was an impossible task. Nonetheless, as an initial step to build a closer relationship between the employees and Huan Qi, Wu Il suggested they all participate in a workshop program. This idea was initially rejected by Huan Qi because he felt his employees wouldn't be willing to do it, but he eventually agreed. In short, the workshop activity took place, but the employees ended up being closer to Wu Il than Huan Qi. During a guessing game, Wu Il, who demonstrated a method by hugging Ro Wun, made Huan Qi feel jealous. When it was Huan Qi's turn to perform some actions, he appeared like a strange person, which confused his employees. A misunderstanding occurred again when Huan Qi, wanting to impress the employees, planned to cook a nice meal for them. Unfortunately, this plan failed because Yuhi intervened, leading Huan Qi to speak harshly. This was witnessed by the employees, making them think Huan Qi was selfish and rude. Ro Wun, who understood that Huan Qi only wanted to do something nice for them, then approached Wu Il and asked for his advice on how to clear up the misunderstanding among the Silent Monster Division regarding Huan Qi. That night, Wu Il and Ro Wun were by the campfire when suddenly the fire flared up, startling her. Acting quickly, Wu Il hugged her, which was seen by Huan Qi and made him even more jealous. Seeing Ro Wun always close to Wu Il, that night, Huan Qi, not wanting the incident with Jihei to repeat with Ro Wun, immediately approached her and said that Wu Il was engaged and would soon be married. Huan Qi even instructed Ro Wun to focus on work, as he had decided she would be the one to give the presentation. Ro Wun agreed to Huan Qi's request and promised to do her best to demonstrate her abilities. The next day, Ro Wun prepared for the presentation, despite never having done it before. At the same time, Huan Qi softened and decided to help her, as she had working overtime throughout the night. During the rehearsal, it turned out that Ro Wun was still unable to handle the presentation and looked very nervous. This made Ro Wun feel sad, and Huan Qi tried to comfort her by saying that everyone starts off poorly but will become great through effort and learning. Huan Qi also mentioned that Ro Wun could excel because she had many strengths, being energetic and always enthusiastic. Hearing this, Ro Wun's sadness was somewhat alleviated, and she became determined to do her best. In the end, with the help of her colleagues and Huan Qi, Ro Wun was able to give a good presentation in front of the investors. Ro Wun even received congratulations from Wu Il, until Isu suddenly arrived and saw Wu Il being close to Ro Wun. For some reason, Isu seemed to hide her jealousy. On that day, Ro Wun's feelings became uncertain. Originally, she came to the company to find out the cause of Jihei's death, but now she was becoming more comfortable with her life as an employee. Soon after, Christmas Day arrived. On this day, Ro Wun usually goes to the orphanage to cheer up the children there, but this time, she planned to do so dressed as a panda. As she was about to head to the orphanage, Huan Qi suddenly arrived and offered her a ride. At the orphanage, Ro Wun entertained the children in her panda costume, which made Huan Qi ask why she did this. Ro Wun explained that it was a tradition she used to do with Jihei. Therefore, Huan Qi took the panda costume, intending to entertain the children at the orphanage in her place. After mustering the courage to perform in front of the children at the orphanage, Huan Qi felt happier than ever, as for the first time, he did not experience the usual anxiety or fear. In fact, afterward, Huan Qi was seen preparing a kimchi dish that he made himself to serve to the residents of the orphanage. At that moment, Ro Wun then asked Huan Qi about his thoughts on a rumor concerning a former secretary who once did the unthinkable. Hearing this, Huan Qi said that his former secretary was someone he greatly admired and who had a positive impact on his life. However, Huan Qi deeply regretted not expressing this directly to her because she was no longer around. Upon hearing this story, Ro-woon began to cry as she recounted how her mother used to make kimchi on Christmas Eve. However, after Ji-hae's death, her mother stopped making kimchi. The loss of Ji-hae made Ro-woon no longer enjoy her mother's kimchi. But now, things were slowly changing as his kimchi was delicious and reminded her of her mother's cooking. From their conversation, Ro-woon came to realize that Huan Qi's nature was genuinely kind, leading her to believe that it was impossible for him to be the reason Ji-hae did the unthinkable. On the other hand, Woo-il was having a meal with Yi-soo and her parents. However, after a while, Woo-il felt that Huan Qi's father still could not accept him as part of the family, as he kept instructing him to help Huan Qi with an important project. As a result, Woo-il felt that his presence in Yi-soo's family was only needed and exploited. Consequently, he returned to his room feeling sad, but soon he noticed the sketch given to him by Ji-hae long ago. Shortly after, Ro-woon received a call from Woo-il, asking her to come to a certain place, saying that there was something he wanted to tell her. Ro-woon, remembering Woo-il's past kindness toward her, began to suspect that Mr. Smith, who always sent flowers, might be Woo-il. Therefore, she hurried to where Woo-il was. Unexpectedly, Woo-il was drunk, his distress causing him to mistake Ro-woon for Ji-hae. At that moment, Woo-il poured out his regret and apologized for being a coward who was dishonest with his own feelings. Ro-woon, hearing this, was perplexed and did not understand his words. Additionally, because Woo-il was so intoxicated that he was nearly unconscious, Ro-woon asked for permission to give him a headache remedy. Meanwhile, Huan Qi, still at the orphanage, received a call from Yi-soo informing him that Woo-il had gone missing but was now found at a nightclub. Huan Qi, who was worried about Ro-woon after she suddenly left, immediately inquired if she was also at the club. Unexpectedly, Yi-soo, who saw Ro-woon returning after buying headache medicine, said that Woo-il was alone. This indicated that Yi-soo did not care about anyone except Woo-il, although he ignored her attention. The next day, after reflecting on Huan Qi's kindness, Ro-woon was seen speaking with a male friend, informing him that she would be ending her quest for revenge. Ro-woon also felt that Huan Qi was not the cause of Ji-hae's death. Hearing this, her friend felt relieved because he had been worried about something bad happening to her. However, Ro-woon said that she would not leave the company because she wanted to investigate something else related to the identity of Mr. Smith. Ro-woon actually wanted to express her gratitude, as the flowers had helped her move on from her dark past. On the other hand, Huan Qi also wanted to escape his antisocial life. That day, Huan Qi visited his regular psychiatrist, who observed significant progress in him, as he no longer showed signs of anxiety when speaking to people around him. The psychiatrist even advised Huan Qi to move his seat closer to the 5 employees at the office. Unexpectedly, the Silent Monster Division was tasked with handling a problem involving a CEO of an airline company, who was accused of abuse of power. The next day, Huan Qi, who was sitting much closer to the employees for the first time, nervously asked them for their opinions on the client's problem. In reality, none of their ideas were acceptable to Huan Qi. However, Huan Qi had a brilliant idea to resolve the client's issue, but he didn't know how to convey it effectively to his employees. Frustrated by this, Huan Qi slammed the table, causing the employees to think he was angry. Amid his confusion, Huan Qi visited the psychiatrist again for advice. The psychiatrist suggested that Huan Qi should try to bond with his employees by inviting them to socialize outside of work hours. Following the psychiatrist's advice, Huan Qi invited his employees to a cafe. However, he arrived late because he was busy choosing an appropriate outfit. Fortunately, one of his employees helped him select a suitable outfit. Upon arriving at the cafe, the employees were astonished by Huan Qi's drastically improved appearance. As the good atmosphere began to develop, Woo-il and his other subordinates unexpectedly showed up, making Huan Qi feel awkward again, as the employees' attention was diverted to Woo-il. However, Huan Qi tried his best to blend in. Soon after, Huan Qi, holding a camera, became absorbed in taking continuous photos of Ro-woon. While photographing, Huan Qi saw Ro Woon approaching Wu Il to speak privately, which made him feel jealous. As a result, Huan Qi lost control of his emotions and shouted at Wu Il in front of everyone. Realizing his mistake, Huan Qi hurriedly left. After the incident, Huan Qi contacted the psychiatrist to vent about his experiences that day. To his surprise, the psychiatrist was pleased to hear about it, as she viewed Huan Qi's anger as a positive development, indicating he was beginning to express his emotions. Unbeknownst to him, Ro Woon overheard the conversation with the psychiatrist, which embarrassed her, and she left immediately. While alone in his office, Huan Qi reviewed the photos he had taken earlier. At that moment, he realized that most of the photos were of Ro Woon, which made him confused and uncertain if he was starting to have feelings for her. A short while later, Ro Woon came to inform Huan Qi that the idea he had proposed to restore the client's reputation had been approved by the headmistress of the orphanage. It turned out they planned to facilitate a vacation for the orphanage children. However, instead of focusing on this, Huan Qi asked about Ro Woon meeting Wu Il on Christmas Eve. Ro Woon then explained that she had indeed met Wu Il, but her visit was because she was worried about him and had no other intentions. She then asked permission to go to the kitchen to get a drink. As Ro Woon walked to the kitchen, Huan Qi realized that his laptop still displayed her photo from that evening, so he quickly diverted Ro Woon's attention, making her awkward as Huan Qi hugged her. In short, the holiday outing with the orphanage children finally took place. As they were about to leave, Wu Il, who was helping a young child, unexpectedly met the headmistress of the orphanage, whom he knew from his time there before being adopted by Huan Qi's family. This encounter made Wu Il somewhat unfocused while dealing with the client, as it reminded him of his painful past. Soon after, Huan Qi told Wu Il to go home because of an emergency call from his mother, leaving Wu Il to trust him with the client's issue. When Wu Il arrived home, he found that Huan Qi's mother just wanted to show off the dress she would wear at Wu Il's and Isu's wedding. At that moment, Huan Qi's father, seeing Wu Il at the orphanage, slapped him without any words. Huan Qi's father was baffled that Wu Il was there instead of helping Huan Qi with the client's problem. Despite receiving harsh treatment, Wu Il couldn't be angry or resist. He simply apologized for neglecting Huan Qi. After that, Wu Il went straight to meet Huan Qi, while Isu also tried to persuade and apologize to him, but Wu Il remained indifferent and did not appreciate her attention. On the other hand, Huan Qi and his group were about to depart when a child suddenly cried over losing their panda toy. Huan Qi, aware of the situation, immediately asked Ro Woon to take the children onto the plane while he searched for the toy. Unexpectedly, this caused Huan Qi to miss the flight, leading to Ro Woon being anxious as she couldn't reach his phone. The next day, Ro Woon and the child who had lost their toy were surprised by Huan Qi arriving with the panda toy. Additionally, Huan Qi expressed how much he missed Ro Woon, which made her flustered, thinking that the missing Huan Qi referred to the child missing the panda toy. As night approached, Wu Il unexpectedly arrived at the location, forcing Huan Qi to share a room with him. When settling down to rest, Wu Il expressed his longing for moments like these and wished he could go back 20 years or at least 3 years to before their relationship had strained. The next day, during the event helping the orphanage children with swimming, Huan Qi felt jealous again, seeing Wu Il continuously approaching Ro Woon. The jealousy intensified when he overheard employees saying that Wu Il rushed over after receiving a call from Ro Woon asking for his help because she was worried about handling the client's issue. Amidst his growing jealousy, Huan Qi saw Ro Woon alone with Wu Il. This intensified his jealousy to the point where he could no longer contain it and left when Ro Woon called him. In fact, when Ro Woon was alone with Wu Il, she was simply trying to figure out how to make Huan Qi smile, as she had never seen him smile or make a joke. When Ro Woon was alone, feeling unsettled, Huan Qi approached her. He wanted to ask if there was something between her and Wu Il, which made her upset due to Huan Qi's overly inquisitive behavior. Feeling that Huan Qi was bored, Ro Woon grabbed the camera he was carrying and asked Sejong to join Huan Qi for a banana boat ride. However, instead of having fun, Sejong's fear made things difficult for Huan Qi, leading to both of them falling into the water. Meanwhile, Ro Woon, who was with Gyo Ri, encountered a problem when a monkey stole her camera bag. Consequently, Ro Woon chased the monkey into the forest alone. On the other hand, Huan Qi, who had just finished playing with Se Zhang, realized that the camera Ro Woon had taken still contained many of her photos that he hadn't deleted. This made him rush to find Ro Woon because he feared she might see them. While searching for Ro Woon, Huan Qi ran into Wu Il, who was also searching for her. Eventually, they met Gyo Ri, who informed them that Ro Woon had gone into the forest to chase the monkey. The two men panicked and immediately entered the forest, intending to rescue the woman they cared about. At that moment, Huan Qi and Wu Il raced to find Ro Woon first. They even got into a minor argument, which started as playful but became serious when Wu Il said he was fed up with being ordered around and treated like an outsider by Huan Qi and his family. Huan Qi, hearing this, responded that Wu Il had misunderstood because he had never thought of him that way. Fortunately, just as they were about to fight, Ro Woon's voice calling for help made them stop arguing and look for her by taking different paths. Unexpectedly, the path Huan Qi chose led him directly to Ro Woon. At that moment, Huan Qi was greatly relieved to see Ro Woon safe, but she was yelling because her bag was stuck in a tree. Seeing Huan Qi in a panic, Ro Woon asked if he was so worried that he rushed to find her. Huan Qi, not wanting his feelings to be revealed, explained that he was only concerned about the camera that Ro Woon had previously taken. Therefore, Ro Woon instructed Huan Qi to lift her so she could retrieve the bag. However, since it was still out of reach, she asked Huan Qi to lift her higher. After successfully getting the bag, Huan Qi fell, causing Ro Woon to land on top of him. This incident resulted in Huan Qi twisting his ankle and being unable to walk. Fortunately, Wu Il arrived promptly and carried Huan Qi back to the hotel. Unbeknownst to him, Ro Woon had already seen the photos on the camera. Later that night, Huan Qi, who was alone, was visited by Ro Woon, who told him that she had seen the photos in the camera. Upon hearing this, Huan Qi immediately became flustered and tried to come up with an excuse for accidentally taking those photos. However, it turned out that the photos Ro Woon had seen were of the Silent Monster Division's activities. Ro Woon then apologized for not realizing how attentive Huan Qi had been towards all the employees. She also asked Huan Qi not to change into someone else as he had mentioned before, because Ro Woon was very happy with Huan Qi, just the way he was. Hearing this, Huan Qi immediately smiled, making Ro Woon very happy as it was the first time she saw a genuine smile from him. However, his happiness was interrupted by Wu Il, who suddenly arrived, asking Ro Woon to come with him because there was something he wanted to say. Naturally, Huan Qi did not allow this, leading to renewed tension between the two. Since neither was willing to back down, Ro Woon didn't know how to calm them down. Eventually, Ro Woon suggested that they compete in a drinking contest. As night fell, both men got extremely drunk, and Ro Woon had to help them back to their rooms. Seeing Ro Woon sleeping next to him, Huan Qi, half conscious, embraced her. Unexpectedly, Ro Woon did not resist, as she had started to develop feelings for Huan Qi. The next morning, Ro Woon, who had exhausted herself bringing both men to their rooms, fell asleep there. This surprised Wu Il and Huan Qi, who had just woken up and felt embarrassed. Therefore, they quietly sneaked out of the room so as not to wake Ro Woon. Soon after, the relationship between Wu Il and Huan Qi improved thanks to Ro Woon's efforts. At that time, Wu Il suggested that he should cancel his marriage to Yi Su, as he believed it would eventually ruin their friendship. Furthermore, Wu Il still felt guilty about Ji Hei for forcing a relationship with Yi Su. Therefore, Wu Il stated that he would not repeat the same mistake this time. Unexpectedly, Huan Qi felt the same way, as he would not repeat his past mistakes and would no longer be indecisive, since he now understood Wu Il's intention to make Ro Woon his girlfriend. As a result, Huan Qi felt the need to protect Ro Woon because she was Ji Hei's younger sister. Hearing Ro Woon's true background, Wu Il was shocked to learn that she was Ji Hei's biological sister. Consequently, Huan Qi warned Wu Il not to do anything to Ro Woon, as he would be the one to protect her. Wu Il was taken aback by Huan Qi's courage and suggested that they should keep it a secret from his father, as Ro Woon might be in danger. In the end, Huan Qi expressed his trust in Wu Il to also protect Ro Woon. Soon after, Ro Woon came to apologize to Huan Qi for falling asleep in his room. And now there was a possibility that the news would spread because Se Zhang and others already knew about it. However, Huan Qi told her not to worry, but Ro Woon suddenly tried to lighten the mood by teasing Huan Qi, which made him smile, turning his previously bad mood into happiness due to her attention. A few days later, the vacation ended. At the airport, Huan Qi saw someone holding a sign that instantly reminded him of Yun Jung, his first love who had long disappeared. It turned out that Yun Jung was indeed there, having just arrived from abroad. Yun Jung even tried to call out to Huan Qi, but he didn't hear her because he was focused on Ro Woon. Meanwhile, Wu Il, who had just arrived at the office, had to face the reality that his engagement to Yi Su had been announced. Though unprepared for the news, since Yi Su's family did not discuss it with him beforehand, Wu Il could not reject their decision. Even though Yi Su knew that Wu Il did not have feelings for her, she showed a happy expression, which only made Wu Il feel more pressured. Wu Il then met with Huan Qi to discuss Ro Woon, suggesting that removing her from the company was the best option so that Huan Qi's father wouldn't find out about her. However, Huan Qi told Wu Il not to take any action and to give him time to think. In the midst of their conversation, Ro Woon suddenly arrived, causing Wu Il to leave immediately. At that moment, Wu Il showed a cold attitude towards Ro Woon, who was confused by the situation. Ro Woon then asked Huan Qi about it, but he only allowed her curiosity to remain unanswered. One day, the Silent Monster Division, led by Huan Qi, was mocked by the employees of Wu Il's division. They even taunted Huan Qi as a failed leader, not as capable as Wu Il, who was very responsible. This made Yu He and others feel belittled, and they decided to prove themselves by working on the same project that Wu Il's division was also working on. The project involved refurbishing a nearly bankrupt cinema to make it attractive to viewers again. Ro Woon, enthusiastic about the task, wanted to check out the cinema that would be their target. Huan Qi, also aware of this, planned to follow Ro Woon, but instead, he met Yun Jung. Unfortunately, upon seeing Yun Jung, who was now even more beautiful, Huan Qi found himself no longer interested in her because his heart was now set on Ro Woon. This was unlike Yun Jung, who seemed more interested in him. In short, Huan Qi arrived at the cinema to find Ro Woon exhausted and asleep. He then offered his shoulder for Ro Woon to rest on. However, Ro Woon was unaware of this, and when she woke up, Huan Qi was already sitting in a different seat. The Silent Monster Division team held a meeting to discuss the concept they would work on. However, Huan Qi had no ideas yet, unlike Wu Il's division, which had a great concept for their project. This made Se Zhang and others pessimistic, feeling that the Silent Monster Division would lose again. Ro Woon, not wanting that to happen, took her colleagues to the chosen cinema. When they arrived, Sunbong commented that the cinema seemed like a horror movie set. Therefore, Huan Qi had the idea to use Sunbong's comment as the concept they would adopt. In shorty, they held another meeting to make the concept a reality. Thanks to the hard work of each employee and their closeness, Huan Qi unconsciously smiled freely in front of his employees. This smile was the first time Huan Qi had shown such openness, which motivated the employees and made them feel that their ideas were appreciated. A few days later, the idea came to action, with the Silent Monster Division team, along with others, performing a cosplay as ghosts at the cinema. It turned out that the idea was very well received by the audience, who experienced a different sensation when visiting the cinema. Meanwhile, Huan Qi was being made up by Ro Woon as one of the ghosts, and a romantic moment occurred when Ro Woon accidentally stared at him, leading to a kiss between them. At that moment, Huan Qi also held her hand tightly. Switching to Yi Su, she appeared excitedly preparing for her wedding with Wu Il. Additionally, Yi Su, who was very happy, tried to contact him and invite him on a date before they attended an interview to talk about the wedding preparations. However, as usual, Wu Il declined her invitation, which only made her more disappointed. It turned out that Wu Il rejected Yi Su's invitation because he intended to meet Ro Woon, who was with Huan Qi at that time. Unaware, Yi Su went to the cinema intending to catch up with Wu Il and immediately took his hand. However, Wu Il looked uncomfortable as he was meeting Ro Woon at that moment. Seeing their closeness, Ro Woon only congratulated Wu Il and Yi Su on their upcoming wedding. Then, unexpectedly, Ro Woon noticed a necklace Yi Su was wearing. It turned out that the necklace was identical to the one Ji Hei used to wear because it was actually a gift from Wu Il, In short, during the interview, Woo-il was again disappointed when Lee-soo's father seemed to belittle him while they answered questions from a reporter. He mentioned that he was not worried about Woo-il potentially taking over Hwan-ki's power because he came from an orphanage. Although this was true, the expression of frustration and anger was clear on Woo-il, and he told Lee-soo that their relationship could not continue. Woo-il even left Lee-soo just like that. Not wanting to lose Woo-il, Lee-soo ran after him, continuously shouting for him not to leave her. However, Woo-il seemed indifferent, leading Lee-soo to feel desperate and do something reckless by throwing herself in front of a passing car. Meanwhile, Hwan-ki, unaware of his sister's condition, was still at the office and called Ro-woon to thank her for the support she had given him. Unfortunately, Ro-woon still did not fully realize that Hwan-ki had feelings for her, so she wondered about his attentive behavior towards her. A short while later, Hwan-ki received a phone call instructing him to go to the hospital because Lee-soo was being treated there. When Hwan-ki arrived at the treatment room, he heard Lee-soo apologizing to Woo-il. It turned out that Lee-soo had been engaging in self-harming behaviors due to fear of losing Woo-il. Therefore, Hwan-ki pleaded with the doctor not to inform anyone about this, including his own parents. Hwan-ki then spoke privately with Woo-il and asked him not to leave Lee-soo, especially given her current unstable condition. Actually, Hwan-ki knew that Woo-il had no feelings for Lee-soo at all. However, this time he still pleaded with Woo-il to stay because Hwan-ki feared that Lee-soo would become even more reckless. Hearing his friend's plea, Woo-il set a condition for him to stay by Lee-soo's side. Hwan-ki had to fire Ro-woon from the company. With no other choice, Hwan-ki transferred Ro-woon to a different division. Additionally, Hwan-ki became cold and indifferent towards Ro-woon, which confused her. As a result, Ro-woon tried to ask Hwan-ki if she had done something wrong. However, Hwan-ki only said that Ro-woon had not done anything wrong, and that this all happened because of his own mistakes, leaving Ro-woon even more puzzled by his words. One night, Hwan-ki called everyone to come to a cafe, but he did not contact Ro-woon at all. Feeling that Woo-il might have answers about his changed behavior, Ro-woon tried to meet him, but Woo-il avoided her. Meanwhile, Hwan-ki, who was accustomed to Ro-woon's presence, found himself increasingly haunted by thoughts of her, whom he actually loved deeply. Hwan-ki even imagined that Ro-woon was already in his office. However, strangely, when Ro-woon actually arrived, Hwan-ki thought he was hallucinating. Unexpectedly, Ro-woon came to his office to deliver Yoon-jung, and seeing them so close made Ro-woon think that Hwan-ki now had a love interest. As a result, Ro-woon felt jealous seeing Hwan-ki and Yoon-jung being very close. It turned out that Yoon-jung came to Hwan-ki's office with the intention of starting a relationship with him. Unfortunately, Hwan-ki seemed uninterested in a serious relationship with Yoon-jung and claimed to be focused on work until he was suddenly interrupted by a ringing phone from one of the employees. When Hwan-ki answered the call, it was an emergency from the employee's child's school, who was sick at that time. It was also evident that Hwan-ki was very concerned about the employee's family and went to the hospital where the child was being treated. Switching to Lee-soo, whose condition was improving, she tried to go to the bathroom to clean her hair when Woo-il informed her that he would come to visit. However, Woo-il arrived earlier than expected, which surprised Lee-soo as she hadn't gotten ready at all. At that moment, Woo-il understood her desire to look perfect in front of him, so he helped her clean her hair. Lee-soo then mentioned that she knew her father intended to use Woo-il as a corporate puppet. Therefore, she urged Woo-il to take advantage of their marriage and get back at her father. Lee-soo was even willing to marry Woo-il despite not having any feelings for her. Switching back to Hwan-ki and Ro-woon, they encountered a problem because Yoo-hee had to cancel her presentation due to having to care for her sick child. Therefore, Hwan-ki took the initiative to give the presentation in Yoo-hee's place. But this made Ro-woon worried because the last time he gave a presentation, he ended up being silent and not saying anything. As a result, Ro-woon was determined to help until Hwan-ki succeeded. On the way, Ro-woon mistakenly intended to kiss Hwan-ki, but at that moment, he only wanted to let her know that there was food stuck in her teeth, which embarrassed her, leading her to immediately get out of the car. The next day, Ro-woon and the other employees tried to help Hwan-ki gain confidence for his presentation, even though it wasn't easy. However, Ro-woon didn't give up and invited Hwan Ki to go jogging, as it could boost his self-confidence. In short, after several days of practice, the day of the presentation finally arrived. However, Hwan Ki experienced anxiety that made him panic and hide in the restroom. Seeing this, Ro-woon tried to calm Hwan Ki by saying that no matter the outcome, she would still be proud of him. But suddenly, because the faucet started leaking, both of them got soaked. In that moment, caught up in the situation, Hwan Ki and Ro-woon kissed. Soon after, Hwan Ki felt anxiety again because he had to give the presentation after Woo-il had performed excellently. Moreover, Ro-woon, who always encouraged him, seemed not to be there. At that moment, Hwan Ki became a subject of ridicule because the script he had memorized suddenly vanished from his mind. However, a flash of light from a phone caught Hwan Ki's attention, and it turned out to be Ro-woon. Seeing this, his nervousness disappeared, and Hwan Ki was able to give his presentation smoothly. After finishing, Hwan Ki hurried to find Ro-woon and hugged her while thanking her. Ro-woon, feeling something in her heart, then said that she didn't deserve his thanks. Unexpectedly, Hwan Ki suddenly collapsed due to a high fever. While resting in his office, Hwan Ki became annoyed as one by one his employees came to congratulate him on his successful presentation. Additionally, Woo-il's performance became a subject of mockery for the employees who had previously underestimated him. After he recovered, Hwan Ki met Ro-woon, who looked anxious waiting for him in the adjacent room. At that moment, he finally told her the truth, that he knew who Ro-woon really was, and because of this, Hwan Ki felt unworthy of insisting on being with her. He also stated that the person responsible for Ji-hae's death and for making her life miserable was himself. Hearing his words, Ro-woon said that she knew Hwan Ki was not to blame. However, she still asked Hwan Ki to tell her the cause of Ji-hae's death. Hwan Ki said he couldn't reveal the truth at that moment and asked Ro-woon to wait until he was ready. The next day, Hwan Ki's health worsened. This surprised Yoo-hee, as he had been fine the day before. It turned out that, despite being unwell, Hwan Ki forced himself to go to Ro-woon's house just to clean the stairs leading to her home, as he was worried that she might fall due to the slippery path. Meanwhile, at the office, Woo-il's subordinates, who had initially underestimated Hwan Ki, were now in disbelief that their superior was easily defeated by him. As a result, Woo-il began to lose trust from his subordinates. Additionally, his frustration grew when Hwan Ki's father praised his son in front of him. Furthermore, Hwan Ki requested Woo-il to reveal the truth they had been concealing about Ji-hae's death. This caused Woo-il to become emotional and asked Hwan Ki if he felt superior now and no longer needed him. However, Hwan Ki explained that his intention was to uncover the truth so that they could no longer feel burdened and guilty. On the other hand, Ro-woon was still uncertain about her feelings for Hwan Ki, so she discussed it with a friend. She felt that she should be angry with Hwan Ki for not revealing the cause of her sister's death. Yet, on the other hand, she missed him more because she had just learned that Mr. Smith's true identity was Hwan Ki. Eventually, when she returned home, Ro-woon saw Hwan Ki secretly coming to shave his hair at her father's shop. Hwan Ki, not expecting to be caught by Ro-woon, quickly fled without explaining anything. That night, Hwan Ki also took out the trash for Ro-woon's father, which made the neighbors realize he had been sweeping and cleaning all along. Ro-woon was also very impressed by his actions, as he had always been helping her family. A short while later, Hwan Ki received a call from his subordinates about a mistake he made in booking a venue for their company event. With his connections, Hwan Ki managed to book a venue close to their event, which unexpectedly turned out to be owned by Yoonjung. As a token of gratitude, Hwan Ki accepted her invitation to have a meal together. However, their closeness was seen by Ro-woon, causing her to feel more jealous. At that moment, Ro-woon confessed to Yoo-hee that she had fallen for their boss. Before Yoo-hee could offer advice, Ro-woon experienced stomach pains similar to Gyo-ri and others. This required them to be rushed to the hospital, causing the preparations for the event they were working on to be delayed. Realizing the importance of the event, Ro-woon attempted to complete it alone, but she also started showing symptoms of food poisoning like her friends. Fortunately, Hwan Ki arrived promptly to help her. When Ro-woon regained her senses, she panicked, realizing that the cause of their food poisoning was sushi. She remembered that Huan Qi had also eaten the same sushi. In her weakened state, Ro Woon went back to the event venue to check on Huan Qi. At that moment, she found him working alone to put up banners. After finishing the preparations, Huan Qi collapsed from the pain caused by the poisoning. With great care, Ro Woon took care of Huan Qi, and when he woke up, Huan Qi immediately confessed his feelings to Ro Woon, telling her that he loved her. From that moment on, Huan Qi and Ro Woon officially became a couple. However, they soon faced a problem when Ro Woon's father discovered that she worked for the company responsible for Ji Hei's death. Ro Woon's father, enraged, brought gasoline with the intention of burning down the company. A short while later, Ro Woon's father was stunned to learn that the owner of the company was Huan Qi, the man who had always visited his business. Ro Woon's father's anger intensified because his daughter was now close to Huan Qi. At that moment, Huan Qi immediately knelt to apologize upon seeing her father's anger, and he also said that he had no intention of deceiving him. Unfortunately, Ro Woon's father was unable to accept the apology, therefore he left with Ro Woon from that place. Upon arriving home, Ro Woon tried to explain to her father that Huan Qi was not a bad person. She reminded him that for the past 3 years, Huan Qi had secretly sent flowers and always helped their family. She also said that she is the one that should be blamed because she chose to join Huan Qi's company with a mission of revenge. Furthermore, Ro Woon nearly ruined his life by spreading false rumors about him. After the incident, Ro Woon, not wanting Huan Qi to be upset because of her father, tried to meet him again. She claimed to be hungry, so Huan Qi took the initiative to cook for her. At that moment, Huan Qi asked Ro Woon not to feel compelled to be kind to him, as he believed her father's anger was understandable given what he had done to her family. Now that Ro Woon did not want to part from him, she told Huan Qi that he need not worry about her father's attitude. She believed that her father would eventually realize that Huan Qi was not at fault. After their conversation, Ro Woon asked Huan Qi if she could stay over because she was having an argument with her father. Huan Qi agreed, allowing her to sleep in his bed while he set up a tent in the room. As the night wore on, Huan Qi found it hard to sleep, being the first time a girl he loved was staying in his room. Eventually, Huan Qi tried to show his care by covering Ro Woon with a blanket and adjusting her sleeping position. However, Ro Woon woke up, causing Huan Qi to feel embarrassed and quickly retreat to the tent. The next morning, Huan Qi woke up late and realized that Sun Bong had come to his office. This worried him because he didn't want Sun Bong to misunderstand if he saw Ro Woon in his room. To avoid this, Huan Qi tried to distract Sun Bong so that Ro Woon could leave unnoticed. However, just as Ro Woon was about to exit, Yu He arrived, forcing Ro Woon to return to the room to hide. Determined, Huan Qi went to the mall to buy clothes for Ro Woon so that other employees would believe she was there to work. As a result, this plan successfully fooled the other 4 employees. Later, Ro Woon returned home and found that the flowers Huan Qi had given her were gone from her room. Moreover, her father's photo of her sister had also been taken. This made Ro Woon even angrier at her father's actions. Without thinking twice, Ro Woon packed her clothes into a suitcase and planned to leave the house. She also told her father that she could no longer tolerate his selfishness and that she would choose to live with Huan Qi this time. Seeing his daughter determined to leave, her father slapped her, causing Ro Woon to cry as she said that her father knew Huan Qi was a good person. She also mentioned that one day, Huan Qi would come and reveal what really happened to Ji Hei. After that, Ro Woon left and returned to Huan Qi, who was surprised to see her arriving with a suitcase. As Huan Qi was about to calm Ro Woon by giving her a cup of tea, both of them were startled by the arrival of Yun Jung, who said that she did not want to lose out on winning Huan Qi's heart, which made him feel overwhelmed by the aggressive behavior of both women. Consequently, they spent time together drinking. When Huan Qi fell asleep, Yun Jung already knew that the girl in his heart was Ro Woon. Therefore, she left a message for Ro Woon to keep trying and take care of Huan Qi. The next morning, Huan Qi was surprised to see Ro Woon just out of the shower, causing him to feel awkward. Even though Ro Woon only wanted to give him 2 tickets to an art exhibition hosted by Yun Jung, where they agreed to meet at the exhibition. As Huan Qi was heading to the location, he was approached by Yun Jung, who mentioned that she had invited Wu Il because she had something to discuss. Indeed, Woo-il arrived, and Yun-jung then asked to speak with him privately. Unexpectedly, her purpose for inviting Woo-il was to have him admit everything that happened to Ji-hae. By making this confession, Hwan-ki would no longer be blamed for things he should not be responsible for. According to Yun-jung, Hwan-ki would never leave her once he acknowledged everything that had happened. However, instead of regretting his actions, Woo-il appeared angry with Hwan-ki for revealing his secret to Yun-jung. Woo-il explained that he did not want to disclose the truth because it would cause Isu to sad. Hearing this, Hwan-ki replied that his younger sister had known about it all along, and Isu had been acting as though she did not know because of her deep love for Woo-il. Soon after, Isu arrived and was immediately taken outside by Hwan-ki. In the car, Hwan-ki asked Isu to persuade Woo-il to reveal what had happened. However, she refused, feeling that the matter had been buried for the past 3 years. As a result, Hwan-ki then said that during these 3 years, a family had been hurt because they had experienced the truth. Not long after, Ro-woon also arrived, making Isu realize that she was Ji-hae's younger sister. Isu was suddenly reminded of the past before Ji-hae did the unthinkable. At that time, Ji-hae had met Isu first to apologize for making Woo-il fall in love with her. Unexpectedly, Isu injured her own hand while saying that it would be better if she did not exist if she could not be with Woo-il. After threatening with her words, Isu later heard that Ji-hae had done the unthinkable. Seeing Isu looking so pale, Hwan-ki apologized to Ro-woon for not being able to accompany her to Yun-jung's exhibition. Hwan-ki said he had to take his younger sister first. Ro-woon understood his words, as she was concerned about Isu, who seemed to be in a bad state. After that, Ro-woon entered the exhibition building, where she met Woo-il, who informed her that Isu seemed to be unwell. However, Woo-il said nothing further, as if he didn't care about her condition. Meanwhile, Isu, who was being driven home by Hwan-ki, asked her brother to pull over. Apparently, she felt uneasy after learning that Ro-woon was Ji-hae's biological sister. Additionally, Isu was terrified of losing Woo-il if the truth about Ji-hae's death were to come out. Therefore, Isu begged Hwan-ki to keep everything a secret for his own good, so that he could remain with Ro-woon. If he was insisted on revealing the truth about Ji-hae's death, it would be the same as burying Ro-woon's love for him. Ro-woon might even come to hate him. However, Hwan-ki said that he had already resolved to uncover the truth and would accept whatever consequences came his way. When he returned to his office, Hwan-ki saw Ro-woon asleep, which reminded him of Isu's words about how he might no longer be able to be with Ro-woon. Amidst his confusion, Hwan-ki went to see Yun-jung and asked for advice on what decision he should make. At that moment, Yun-jung advised Hwan-ki to stick to the original plan, to reveal everything while cherishing his remaining moments with Ro-woon, as that was all he could do now. Later, Hwan-ki returned home and saw Ro-woon attempting to play the guitar. Remembering Yun-jung's advice, Hwan-ki, who wasn't skilled at playing the guitar or singing, tried his best to entertain Ro-woon. Unexpectedly, that small effort managed to make her smile. After that, Ro-woon played the guitar for Hwan-ki, and it turned out her voice and guitar skills were quite impressive. Seeing this made him feel sad, as he grew more afraid that such happy moments might never happen again. A little while later, Woo-il arrived and asked Hwan-ki to meet him in his office. It turned out, Woo-il wanted to ask about what Isu knew regarding his affair with Ji-hae. Hwan-ki then revealed that she had known about it all along, including all the secrets that had been hidden. Therefore, from now on, Hwan-ki would no longer force him to stay with Isu, as it only added to his burden. Hwan-ki promised to help Woo-il take responsibility when they finally revealed the truth. Afterward, Hwan-ki went to his office and found Ro-woon waiting for him. Knowing that they only had a few days left together, Hwan-ki didn't want to waste any time. He decided to do whatever he could to make Ro-woon happy, one of which was playing cards. Hwan-ki did everything, even when Ro-woon asked him to dance. Without any hesitation, he complied with all her requests. The next day, Isu, who was at the salon, was preparing for her wedding with Woo-il. Suddenly, she received a call from Woo-il, who said that he was already at the wedding dress fitting. Isu was very surprised because he had previously shown no interest. When they met, Woo Il took Isu to a place which turned out to be an amusement park. Unlike his usual indifferent behavior, Woo Il was very attentive to Isu. He even wrapped a scarf around Isu to keep her warm and then invited her to ride the swings. At that moment, Isu, who rarely received attention, asked Woo Il to stop being so indifferent to her. Woo Il immediately apologized and promised to confess everything to her family and Ji-hae's family, admitting that he was the reason Ji-hae had done the unthinkable. Isu, hearing this, could only cry and beg Woo Il not to leave her. However, Woo Il still left her. Meanwhile, Ro Woon, still unaware of everything, went to Woo Il's office to deliver a wedding gift. However, instead, Ro Woon found a sketch made by her sister. This made Ro Woon curious, and she wanted to ask about it right away. At that moment, Woo Il was meeting with Isu's family to confess what had happened to Hwan Ki's former secretary. While bowing deeply, Woo Il first admitted that he could not marry Isu because he was responsible for Ji-hae's death and had even had an affair with her. As a form of responsibility, Woo Il said he would leave the company and give up everything they had provided him. After this confession, Woo Il left. Outside, Woo Il encountered Ro Woon, who was holding Ji-hae's sketch. Seeing Ro Woon's anger, Woo Il finally admitted that he had caused Ji-hae to do the unthinkable. A short while later, Hwan Ki arrived and tried to calm Ro Woon. She then asked him if what Woo Il said was true, which Hwan Ki could only remain silent because he was also guilty, as he had hidden the truth to protect Isu from further pain. Eventually, Hwan Ki realized that Isu was missing, and he became extremely worried about her well-being. Hwan Ki then left Ro Woon, while Woo Il went to meet Ro Woon's father to apologize and explain the tragedy that had befallen Ji-hae. At that moment, Ro Woon's father was angry and shocked to learn that Ji-hae had died because of Woo Il's actions. After discovering the truth, Ro Woon went to the rooftop where Ji-hae had done the unthinkable. When she was about to throw away her sister's necklace, Isu suddenly appeared and confessed that Woo Il was not to blame, as she revealed that she was the one responsible for Ji-hae's death. At that moment, Isu admitted that she had been afraid Woo Il would choose Ji-hae, so she had threatened her. After confessing the truth, Isu attempted to do the unthinkable herself, believing her life had no meaning anymore. Fortunately, Ro Woon quickly stopped her, and moments later, Hwan Ki arrived and immediately brought both of them down from the rooftop. Hwan Ki pleaded with Isu not to act recklessly again, reminding her that life doesn't end just because she lost a man like Woo Il. After Isu fell asleep, Hwan Ki explained what had happened to Ji-hae. At that moment, he expressed his regret, saying that if only he had arrived at the office sooner, the situation could have been avoided. Hwan Ki then handed over Ji-hae's shoes, which he had kept until now. Seeing her sister's shoes, Ro Woon could no longer hold back her tears. Afterward, she took the shoes to her home and told her father that she felt relieved, as it seemed Ji-hae had finally come home. Meanwhile, Hwan Ki's parents were still upset about Woo Il's confession, and they came to his office, blaming Ji-hae for all the chaos. Hearing this, Hwan Ki felt disappointed with his parents for speaking that way, knowing that the issue actually stemmed from Isu and himself. As in the past, Isu often harmed herself whenever Woo Il tried to end their relationship, which made Hwan Ki's parents unable to believe the truth. Finally, Isu arrived and confirmed what Hwan Ki had said. This left their mother feeling guilty for not understanding her two children's emotions all this time. In short, the company employees were starting to feel anxious, knowing that Woo Il, the boss they considered perfect, was no longer working at the company. Soon after, Hwan Ki arrived and told his employees not to worry because he would help Woo Il return to his former self. This statement changed everyone's perception of Hwan Ki, who had once been considered odd but was now seen as a wise boss, even more so than Woo Il. Meanwhile, Woo Il, who now lived in an orphanage, was visited by Hwan Ki, who asked him to return to the company. However, Woo Il believed that there was no longer a place for him at the office. Not long after, Woo Il met Isu, who finally confessed to him that she had been the last person to see Ji-hae before she did the unthinkable. This revelation shocked him. As it turned out, Isu had caused Ji-hae to take such drastic action. Isu then asked Woo Il to stop feeling guilty, as everything that happened to Ji-hye was her fault. Not long after, Hwan Ki went to Ro Woon's house to apologize to her father. Unlike before, her father seemed to have forgiven Hwan Ki and invited him for a drink. At that moment, Ro Woon's father expressed his gratitude to Hwan Ki for being honest about everything that had happened. The next day, it seemed that Hwan Ki had returned to his introverted self, as he was wearing the hoodie that usually covered his face. This concerned his 4 employees, who worried about his state, especially since Hwan Ki now had to ease the employees' concerns after Woo Il left. At that moment, Hwan Ki was surprised by Ro Woon's sudden appearance as she removed the hoodie he was wearing. This action brought Hwan Ki some comfort, as it showed that despite the truths about the past, Ro Woon hadn't changed her mind about him. Ro Woon remained as cheerful as ever, which positively influenced Hwan Ki to resolve the office problems. A few days later, Hwan Ki invited his employees to a meeting and explained how much the company needed them. He also expressed his hope that they would be more enthusiastic about their work. As a result, the employees were now impressed by Hwan Ki, realizing that he truly understood their feelings as a boss. After the office issues were resolved, Hwan Ki began focusing on mending his relationship with Ro Woon, which had become strained. In the end, they were able to go on their first date. When Hwan Ki escorted Ro Woon home, a romantic moment occurred when he gave her a necklace as a gift. This, of course, made Ro Woon fall even more in love with Hwan Ki, and she reciprocated his gift with a kiss. Unexpectedly, the newly formed romantic relationship had to face yet another challenge when a man approached Hwan Ki as he was about to leave Ro Woon's house. The man turned out to be Ro Woon's friend and also Ji-hye's close friend. The man told Hwan Ki that the happiness he was feeling was undeserved because all the grief Ro Woon had experienced after losing Ji-hye was entirely his fault. At first, Hwan Ki didn't understand the man's accusations, as he believed everything had been resolved once Woo Il confessed to everything. However, the man revealed that the person Ji-hye truly had feelings for wasn't Woo Il, but Hwan Ki. Moreover, Ji-hye's reason for getting close to Woo Il was to learn more about him. Hearing this, Hwan Ki finally understood why Ji-hye had sent him a message shortly before doing the unthinkable. It turned out Ji-hye had hoped Hwan Ki would agree to meet her. But because she felt rejected by him, Ji-hye believed she had lost his trust, which drove her to take such drastic action. Devastated by this revelation, Hwan Ki told everything to Ro Woon. Because of this truth, their relationship couldn't continue. Ro Woon, now fully aware of what had really happened, looked at the sketch drawn by Ji-hye and realized that Hwan Ki was the one who should have it. Filled with sadness, the two parted ways even though they still loved each other. Meanwhile, Woo Il was once again visited by Isu. Even though their relationship had ended, they had now come to understand each other's strengths and weaknesses. Woo Il, who was usually indifferent, began to feel love for Isu when he saw her sincerity. Eventually, they started their romance anew. On the other hand, Hwan Ki was struggling to earn Ro Woon's forgiveness, showing up at her house every day with flowers. Unfortunately, Ro Woon always locked herself in her room and refused to see him. Ro Woon's father, noticing this, invited Hwan Ki inside because he had something to say. At that moment, he explained that he was about to move out of town because his barbershop business was on the brink of bankruptcy. Additionally, the landlord had suddenly raised the rent to an unreasonably high price. Hearing this, Hwan Ki realized that this was his own father's doing and confronted his parents, asking why they would do something so heartless to Ro Woon's family. Hwan Ki's father responded that he did it to pressure Hwan Ki into marrying the woman of his choice, who was none other than Yoon-jung. However, during a meeting, Yoon-jung rejected the arranged marriage because she had learned that Hwan Ki only loved Ro Woon. Because of this, Hwan Ki thanked Yoon-jung for being honest in front of his father. At the same time, Ro Woon, knowing her father's business was on the verge of collapse, tried to spend her time helping him promote it. In the midst of her efforts, Ro Woon saw Hwan Ki arriving, dressed in a panda costume. Hwan Ki intended to help promote her father's business, so it could become busy again. Unfortunately, his ideas still weren't able to attract customers. A few days later, 4 other employees came to help Ro Woon. With their ideas and experience, they managed to assist Ro Woon's father in bringing more customers to the barbershop. Unexpectedly, Yoon-jung also contributed by using her connections. As a result, Ro Woon was very grateful to her, and at that moment, Yoon-jung said her goodbyes as she was about to go abroad. Before leaving, Yoon-jung made one request of Ro Woon to take good care of Hwan-ki. A few days later, Ro Woon's father's barbershop was crowded with visitors, generating substantial income. Meanwhile, her father, noticing that Ro Woon still appeared sad, asked about her relationship with Hwan-ki. Ro Woon then said that she couldn't be with him anymore, even though she still loved him. This was because Ji-hae had also loved Hwan-ki. Hearing this, her father advised her to live her own life and stop thinking about Ji-hae. He told her that Ji-hae would be happy to see Ro Woon living a joyful life with the man she loved. After hearing this, Ro Woon hugged her father, thanking him for giving his blessing to her life with Hwan-ki. Meanwhile, Hwan-ki faced a serious problem when Ro Woon's friend, who worked as a reporter, exposed the company's wrongdoings. He also uncovered the truth that Hwan-ki's father, who held a lot of power, had been covering up the circumstances surrounding Ji-hae's death. At the same time, Hwan-ki's father, wanting to preserve the company's reputation, ordered his son to scapegoat Woo-il. However, Hwan-ki refused and explained why he had become an introvert. His father never understood his feelings, always prioritizing his own ambitions and the company's success. Because of this, his father was left speechless, realizing he had indeed always forced Hwan-ki to follow his own desires. Later, Woo-il visited Hwan-ki in his office, asking to take responsibility for the media accusations. But Hwan-ki declined, stating that he wanted to take full responsibility himself. As Hwan-ki even decided to resign from his father's company. Unexpectedly, Woo-il continued to insist that he should be blamed in order to stop the media reports. However, Hwan-ki hugged Woo-il, making him realize that he was determined to resolve the issue without involving him. In the end, Hwan-ki resigned and left the office he had worked in for so long. As he left, he recalled the many fond memories he had experienced there, especially his first meeting with Ro Woon and the 4 employees. Before he departed, the 4 employees approached Hwan-ki to thank him for being such a good boss. While driving, Hwan-ki, lost in thought about Ro Woon, was suddenly hit by a car. To his surprise, it was Ro Woon who had crashed into him. Overwhelmed with missing her, Hwan-ki hugged Ro Woon and affirmed that their romance had rekindled, even though he was no longer a CEO. In the end, Hwan-ki moved to a peaceful island to calm his mind. This brought him a sense of happiness, especially since Ro Woon was there with him. Despite sometimes being frustrated by her carefree personality, which was the opposite of his perfectionist nature, Hwan-ki was always happy, as she failed to make him smile. After a few days on the island, Hwan-ki and Ro Woon were visited by Woo-il and Lee-soo. Though things were initially awkward between them, Lee-soo had changed and no longer hid her feelings. This allowed her to form a warm bond with Ro Woon. Meanwhile, Hwan-ki, who was with Woo-il, seemed to wonder how he could now accept Lee-soo's presence. In response, Woo-il explained that he had decided to start everything anew. Woo-il also asked Hwan-ki to return to the company, as the company now desperately needed his brilliant ideas, especially since his father had handed over the company affairs to them. Ro Woon, noticing that her boyfriend had a lot on his mind, advised him to simply follow his heart. Afterward, she showed a video made by the 4 employees, revealing that they, too, were eager for Hwan-ki to return to the company, as he was the kind of boss who cared deeply for his subordinates. In short, Hwan-ki decided to return to the company. However, as a first step, Hwan-ki took his father to get a haircut at Ro Woon's father's shop. Surprisingly, the 2 men were able to bond, which gave him a sense of relief. At the office, the 4 employees were delighted to see the relationship between Hwan-ki and Ro Woon, although they had to pretend not to know about it. One day, Hwan-ki organized a sports competition at the company, which successfully brought the employees together, reigniting their enthusiasm. Even Woo-il and Lee-soo helped Hwan-ki participate in the event. During the competition, Woo-il didn't hesitate to show his affection for Lee-soo in front of everyone. Unexpectedly, Hwan-ki had a plan to reveal something to Ro Woon. When it rained heavily, Huan Qi intentionally made her wait because he wanted to surprise her. Suddenly, Huan Qi started dancing in front of everyone, declaring that Ro Woon was the woman he loved deeply. As a result, everyone was overjoyed to witness the huge transformation in Huan Qi, as the once introverted man had now opened up and found happiness after meeting the woman who had healed the wounds in his heart caused by past tragedies. And so, the series came to an end. Moral lesson from the story: if your plan to sneak someone out unnoticed fails, just buy them new clothes and hope no one asks questions, because apparently, that's the best way to fool 4 employees. And remember, when your life gets messy, a random art exhibition and a cup of tea can solve everything. Temporarily.